Good afternoon, everyone. Is the microphone working? Yes, it is now. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this press conference in quite an impressive venue. Let me start by thanking Yanis Reers for hosting us so well in Riga today and tomorrow. Today we were joined in our meeting by Danielle Nouy, who is, as you know, the chair of the SSM, by the new Estonian Finance Minister, Sven Sester, who also informed us about the new government and their ambition. I realize that all eyes are on Greece, but today was a regular Eurogroup, so we had a full agenda. We also talked about the situation in Cyprus, in Spain. We discussed a report on the single supervisory mechanism and exchanged views on the implementation of the recommendations addressed to the euro area as a whole. As you know, this is part of Eurogroup's thematic discussions to promote growth, enhancing structural reforms. But first, on Greece. Today, the institutions informed us about the ongoing talks with the Greek authorities, and we took stock of the situation. As agreed in February, a comprehensive and detailed list of agreed reforms is needed as a basis for a successful conclusion of the current review. And I would like to reiterate again that a comprehensive deal is necessary before any disbursements can take place. Over the past few weeks, there have been intense discussions between the authorities, the Greek authorities and the institutions. I understand recently there have been some positive signs, but there are still wide differences to cover and to bridge on substance. And we are all aware that time is running out. Too much time has been lost in the past 2 months, and it is therefore clear that these discussions need to make significantly more progress, so that the institutions can give their light on a comprehensive package, which will then go to the Eurogroup for a political decision. The responsibility for that lies mainly on the side of the Greek authorities. Finding an agreement is first and foremost in Greece's interest. I would also like to reiterate that the agreement of the 20th of February remains our framework for reaching a deal. We will take stock of the situation again at our next regular Eurogroup in May. Today we were also joined, as I said, by Danielle Nouy for the first Eurogroup hearing. This is the Eurogroup in banking union format. Eurogroup hearing of the single supervisory mechanism chair. These special hearings are an important part of the way we intend to run the banking union. We've made a lot of progress in a very short time in this area. A lot of work's been done by the SSM, the ECB. We are now focusing on the full establishment of the banking union on the 1st of January 2016 and the cooperation between its two pillars. We agreed the importance that member states transpose the Bank Recovery and Resolution Directive, BRRD, without further delay, and it's also important that member states ratify the intergovernmental agreement on the SRF as quickly as possible. Ministers also supported a concerted work effort on national options and discretions in order to move as rapidly as possible to a more level playing field within the banking union. Our thematic discussion on jobs and growth have become an important part of regular Eurogroup meetings. Today we took stock of the implementation of last year's recommendations to the euro area as a whole in the context of the European semester. Structural reforms are a key part of these recommendations, and we based our discussion on the Commission's Euro area report. Pierre will say more about that. We agreed to continue and intensify these Eurogroup thematic discussions, and these will involve benchmarking of some policies against best practice. We also agreed on some key policy issues that we will be taking up until the end of the year. These will include services market reforms, the link between pension reforms and fiscal sustainability, and we will also take another look at Member States' efforts to reduce the high tax burden on labour, which is also one of the ambitions of the new Estonian government. The aim of our discussions is to stimulate convergence by bringing our key policies closer to best practice, by improving adjustment capacity and resilience to shocks throughout the euro area. Continuing on this reform path is key to boost recovery and to improve the growth potential and employment prospects throughout our region. Then on Spain and Cyprus. First, Spain. We were debriefed by the Commission and the ECB on the main findings of their third post-program surveillance mission to Spain that took place in mid-March, in which, of course, also the ESM was involved. Klaus will probably say more about their involvement. We welcome the significant progress made by Spain. All indicators are showing progress, both in budgetary terms as in economic terms. Of course, we also realize that debt and unemployment are still high, so clearly important challenges are still ahead. But we are confident that Spain will maintain its good track record and adhere to its commitments under the surveillance framework. On Cyprus, I can share good news with you. Also on Cyprus, I can share good news with you. We were informed that on the 17th of April, the Cypriot Parliament legislated to establish an insolvency framework, and that will also make an end to the suspension of the foreclosure framework, which, if I'm informed correctly, will start come into place as of the 6th of May. This framework is needed to restore compliance with the prior actions of the fifth review. So we therefore welcome this important step, bringing the programme back on track, and it will allow the institutions to return to Nicosia to carry out the next review. Another important development in Cyprus, of course, is that Cyprus lifted the last remaining capital controls on April the 6th. Free circulation of capital is thus now has been restored. That is my introduction so far. Pierre.
Merci, Jeroen.
Thank you, Jeroen. I just want to agree with the President of the Eurogroup and say a few words, first of all, on Greece. For 3 months now, since the elections, and 2 months since the 20th of February, we have to take stock of what's happened between those 3 months and 2 months and now. It would be wrong to say that nothing's happened. We have made progress. Limited progress, not sufficient, that's true. But there has been progress, particularly in the very latest few days. We have spoken a lot amongst ourselves, and it's always useful to talk, and we have made some progress. These discussions have enabled the two sides to understand their respective positions and to understand each other better. It wasn't easy at the outset, but it was necessary to go through that process. However, and everyone recognizes, it's also true that we haven't made as much progress as we would have wanted to and as we need. Positions have come closer together on some aspects. On others, we are still too far apart. And so, like the President of the Eurogroup, I would say that we need a global agreement, an overall approach, and we're not there yet. We're not at all near that yet. We're far from it. For a global agreement, for an overall approach, we need reforms. Reforms, on one hand, probably allowing the government to meet its promises and commitments on the social side in particular, that also enable Greece to meet its commitments to its partners, and also because these reforms are necessary for the country's economy to be competitive, to create jobs, to have a fairer society with more growth, which is the natural hoped outcome for the Greek people. Therefore, efforts must be sped up. Acceleration now, this weekend, and from there on, intensive efforts need to be stepped up. That is the only solution for our shared aim to be achieved, the aim we all share for Greece to be anchored in the Eurozone and be stable and prosperous. And for that, as Jeroen said, a large part of responsibility rests on the Greek government.
The nation to reach a positive outcome is as strong as ever. So let's step up a gear and bring this process to a successful conclusion in the interest, as was said, of the Greek people and of all Europeans. I would also like to add very few words on two other member states, Cyprus and Spain. Concerning Cyprus, as Jeroen said, I was able to inform the Eurogroup that there has been very encouraging developments in recent days that opened the way for the program to be back on track after several months, 6 months, as a matter of fact, of difficulties. The adoption last Saturday by the Parliament of the new insolvency framework meant that further delay in the entry into force of the foreclosure law can be avoided, and this law is now into force. And these are, as was said, important steps towards completing the stabilization and strengthening of the banking sector in Cyprus, which in turn is a prerequisite for strengthening the flow of credit to the households and businesses. So we will now be able to move forward with the next review mission to Cyprus, to be started early next month, which I expect to conclude in time for me to report on progress to the next meeting of the Eurogroup on the 11th of May. As regards Spain, I outlined to the Eurogroup the key findings of the third post-program surveillance report, which will be finalized and published in early May. Overall, recent developments in Spain confirm the positive trend seen over the past year. The economic recovery has gained momentum. The financial sector has further stabilized, and the restructuring of banks, having received state aid, is well underway. Also, I want to express satisfaction looking at the implementation of structural reforms, which has progressed, though challenges remain and certain reforms still need to be brought to completion or complemented with additional measures. So, of course, there is no cause for complacency, especially with what we know, unemployment at such high levels, but we wanted to recognize the important progress that has been made in Spain. And as far as the thematic discussion is concerned, I can only confirm the way you address the situation and the importance of structural reform in order to create jobs and growth in the EU, which was also a key message in the IMF meetings last week in Washington.
Mario?
Thanks, Jeroen. I have nothing to add to your words. Thank you.
Klaus?
Well, I will also try to be brief, but a bit longer than the president of the ECB. Obviously, as the largest creditor at the EFSF, we follow closely what's happening in Greece within the Brussels group. Let me remind you, significant amounts of financing would be available from the EFSF to Greece, but only till end of June, and only if there's an agreement first on the reform program. Let me also remind you that in the meanwhile, Greece is benefiting hugely from the very advantageous lending conditions on our loans. The outstanding amount is 131 billion euro. For many years, Greece pays almost no interest rates to the EFSF, and the maturities of our loans are on average more than 32 years. And this alone allows enormous budgetary savings. We have calculated that they amount to 8 to 9 billion euro a year. On Cyprus, like the president of the Eurogroup, this is good news. And maybe it's worth adding that Also, rating agencies are picking up and reacting to these positive news. S&P upgraded Cyprus to B+ recently, and is now in line with all the other rating agencies. And if the reforms continue, I think there are good prospects for Cyprus to return to the markets. Of course, now we are beginning the next review, and there could be a small disbursement from the EFSF towards the end of June if everything goes well. The amounts will be small because the fiscal adjustment is better than anticipated at the beginning of the program, which of course is a very good sign. On Spain, indeed, the ESM participated in the post-program surveillance mission. That's our task. The ESM treaty requires us to do the early warning system. Spain has to pay to the EFSF interest and fees this year, and we don't foresee any problem for that. Let me say a final word on our funding activities, because in the media sometimes I see speculation that we might have problems on the funding side, given that our largest debtor could affect market sentiment. Let me say very clearly that this is not the case. Our funding activities in this very unusual environment are going well. Since QE started about a month and a half ago, EFSF and ESM maturities up to 6 years are trading with negative yields. The secondary market liquidity of supranational issuers like EFSF and ESM has dried up. Spreads between supranationals, also our spreads to the corresponding sovereigns, are historically tight. Nevertheless, in this unusual environment, in March, the ESM was able to issue the first syndicated benchmark with negative yields. And earlier this week, the EFSF managed to issue successfully a new 10-year syndicated issue with a normal benchmark of 3 billion euro and a spread which is historically tight compared to bonds of only 15 basis points. So all this confirms that we can do our work, we can continue to function very well, even in these very exceptional circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of questions. I don't know where the microphone is. Let's start on that side with Peter Spiegel. I don't know all the names, but this guy I happen to know. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Peter Spiegel from the Financial Times. As you said in your opening statement, time is running out. The deadline for the agreement on reforms was supposed to be end of April. We're getting pretty close to end of April. If those deadlines aren't met, the other thing that's in the February 20th agreement is the possible follow-on program, which was foreseen probably for July time period. Do these two conversations begin to merge at some point? If the fifth review kicks into May, June, how can we not join those two conversations together, the fifth review and a follow-on program? Thank you.
You have a point. As time runs out and we get closer to the end of June, which is the end of the extension, the talks also have to start on what happens after. But I think it's crucial that we have an agreement on what has to happen in these 4 months. That would also that would have to come first, also to build trust and to get assurances on how we can work together after June. So, fair point. I hope to get an agreement very quickly. And as we have that, we can then also talk about the future. But it is clear that it's very hard to talk about the future if you cannot even agree on a period of 4 months. So there's our priority. Perhaps the row in front of Mr. Spiegel. Mr. Spiegel will today become my orientation point, and I will direct from him.
Only today. Only today.
Only today, Mr. Regling said.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's Eleni Varvitsiotti from Kathimerini, Greece. Both you and Mr. Moscovici refer to a comprehensive agreement and list of reforms. But since time is running out, money is running out as well, is there any chance that you could agree in a partial agreement and a partial disbursement of, let's say, the SMPs or any other amount of money without the comprehensive agreement?
The answer can be very short, no. We agreed that there will be an agreement on a package for these 4 months, and we will work on that basis. The lady behind Mr. Spiegel.
Ruth Berschens from the German business daily Handelsblatt. I have a question for President Draghi, please. How long can the emergency loan financing of Greek banks continue, or how would you describe the limits of this emergency loan financing for Greece?
Is this a question for me? Okay. ELA will continue to be given until Greek banks will be solvent and will have adequate collateral. Having said that, given the fragility of the current situation, the continuing deposit outflows, the ongoing, I would say, policy dialogue, recently the yields on sovereign bonds were at highest since 2012 PSI time. Now, the higher are the yields, the bigger is the volatility, the more collateral gets destroyed. Also, the current situation is not exactly the same when the current level of haircut had been decided. So the Governing Council may have to go back. What I said in the last press conference was to carefully monitor whether conditions would warrant a change in the current schedule, taking into account the change in the environment. So time is running out, as the President of Eurogroup said, and speed is of the essence. I think progress has been achieved in the last few weeks, in the last few days. But basically, if I may say something on what sort of agreement, I mean, given the general outlines, is here there are 3 building blocks. One is the process. There can't be an agreement if people don't have an adequate process to assess, quantify policy measures. The second point is the fiscal part. And here, for 2015, I mean, further structural fiscal adjustment is needed. But for 2015, this doesn't mean the Greek government has to achieve the fiscal targets currently in the program. The Eurogroup statement of 20th February that the President of Eurogroup recalled is quite clear about that. And the third block is the structural reforms. And there the issue is that there are certain structural reforms that are absolutely essential to guarantee a medium-term sustainability, medium-term growth, and a policy package that would deliver growth, equity, financial stability, and fiscal sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Papercorn here on the second row.
Good afternoon, Mark Papercorn, Volkskrant, Netherlands. Mr. Dijsselbloem, you stated the obvious that more progress needs to be made regarding Greece. Could you make any agreements this morning during the Eurogroup with your Greek colleague how to increase the progress, how to change, let's say, the way the talks are being dealt with until now? Because that apparently was not sufficient. Secondly, were there any member states this morning who said, well, forget it, there's no use to continue on this way, let's stop the whole negotiating process? Thanks a lot.
The second question was quite easy. The answer to that is no. We're all still determined to find a solution and to continue supporting Greece, but of course it has to be useful to support Greece. In other words, there has to be a sustainable plan in fiscal and in economic terms and financial stability terms. The first question was on how to continue the process, how to speed it up. We will talk with the institutions about that. possibly adjustments to the process. Certainly, there are tight timelines. As we all know, liquidity is becoming more and more a problem for the Greek government. So I think the motivation is certainly there.
Now I have the microphone just to follow up.
You were supposed to return the microphone.
I know. But I mean, of course, I mean, it's easy to say we have to speed it up. But I mean, until now, the whole process hasn't worked. So did Mr. Varoufakis make any suggestions? Did you make any suggestions how to change this process? I don't know how, but to make it more efficient and to make it more maybe kind of a pushing.
We have not spoken about that in detail, but we have agreed that the process needs to become more efficient and effective. So we will look at that with great urgency. Perhaps the gentleman here on the first row. Then we will turn to you, sir.
Ilias Yakandaris from Alpha TV. On the speeding up of process, a theme that Mr. Moscovici also referred to, do you think that an extra Eurogroup in this month could help towards this process? And a question to Mr. Draghi. You said in the past on the assurances that the ECB seeks for a successful completion of the program in order to start normalize the liquidity operations. Do you think that a comprehensive list of reforms, as Mr. Dijsselbloem said, would be enough for that? Thank you.
Your first question was whether an extra Eurogroup could speed up the process. That is the reverse order. There has to be a speeding up of the process and an outcome from that process with a positive assessment of the institutions before the Eurogroup can decide on it. We're not going to lock ourselves up for weeks as Eurogroup ministers to negotiate this package. The work has to be done with the institutions at great speed, and then the Eurogroup will come to a political decision on that. If necessary and if possible, we will have an extra Eurogroup, but there's no one foreseen. There has to be a result of the process first. That's the right order. Mario?
Yeah, what I said is that there should be a reasonable expectation for a successful conclusion of the current review under the current arrangements. That's what has to be in place. The assessment, of course, is of the Eurogroup, but the Governing Council will also assess independently the existence of this prerequisite. You?
Gentleman over there in the 1, 2, 3, 4th row.
Thanks. Question from Bonanni from Repubblica to the President Dijsselbloem. You said, if I'm not wrong, that you will take stock of the situation at your next meeting of the ECOFIN of the Eurogroup in May. Does that mean you're confident that until that time Greece won't default?
I think that the Greek government is committed to all its financial obligations, certainly to these international creditors, as agreed. And all I can say about timelines is that I think pace should pick up, and we will discuss the outcome of that as soon as possible. Certainly, the only date that I have on my agenda, that's why I mentioned it, is the 11th of May, and then we'll have a regular next Eurogroup. So that's why I said the next Eurogroup. It's the only date I have so far in my agenda. But my agenda is flexible, so my agenda is not the problem. The gentleman on the 2nd row, please.
Christoph Schmid, Trouw, the Netherlands. On a positive note, you say that limited progress has been made. Can you specify in what fields this progress has been made?
No, I cannot. For reasons that I want to protect the process and give it a chance for success, so I won't go into all the details in the fields that have been addressed and the progress that have been made. There are still some big problems to be solved. Last question, please. Perhaps one of the ladies over there, maybe they can share the microphone.
Mr. Dijsselbloem, we have heard that Mr. Varoufakis has been verbally, let's say, attacked during the meeting. Can you give your comments on that?
Of course, I can't tell you how discussions took place, but I'll be quite frank. It was a very critical discussion. We came to an agreement 2 months ago, and today, of course, we had hoped to hear a positive result and an agreement on which we could then take a decision. And we are still far from that. So yes, it was a very critical discussion. And it showed a great sense of urgency around the room. And we have, again, a commitment from all sides that all will do what is necessary to get the deal within as little time as possible. But yes, it was a critical debate. Yes. Thank you all.